Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, the beginning of Generation 9. A new generation only comes around every maybe 4 years or so. So I got to thinking, how can I celebrate this? Then I had the brilliant idea to try and beat every single Pokémon game that started a generation. Shouldn't be that hard, right?
This was the worst idea I've ever had!
Before we get to that, let's set 3 rules and a quick disclaimer. First rule, play on genuine hardware. No emulation allowed. Rule number 2, only do plot-related post-game content. No bonus stuff such as online play, frontier, or Pokédex completion. Minor exception is box art legendaries. Rule number 3, glitches are allowed. Now that the rules have been set out, let's get onto that disclaimer. The disclaimer regards my recording software. Sadly, my camera died after 10 years of service. But I did replace it. And then I recorded clips without adjusting the shutter speed. I did eventually figure out what I was doing wrong. The shutter speed was on auto, which made the scan lines of the CRT television visible, which made the screen flash. The disclaimer is for the subsequent strobing effect. I put the disclaimer at the beginning, but I'm reiterating it here just in case you didn't see it. Now, how am I going to go about this video? Well, if it was one video, it'd be very long, so I'm splitting it into 3 parts. For convenience, because I don't think you'd want to watch like an hour-long video if it does turn out to be that long. As for the context of the videos, I'm going to detail the journey as quickly as possible while trying to enunciate what was happening in the game. It's a simple strategy, but I think it'll work. Anyway, let's get started, shall we? I had 2 ways to play this game. One was on the original Game Boy, which I do have, but when I tried to figure out how to film the screen, I quickly gave up because of the stupid lighting conditions. So I went with option 2, the Super Game Boy, a Super Nintendo accessory where you can play Game Boy games on the TV. And I also don't have a GameCube, so that rules out Game Boy Color games and Game Boy Advance games. Anyway, with the console picked and the cartridges inserted, I was ready to begin. Once the game began, I named myself Groudon and the rival Kyogre. Creative, I know. After trying to leave my hometown and getting dragged to the lab, I picked Charmander as my starter. After a miraculous victory against my rival, I finally began my journey. Once I reached Viridian Forest, however, I said,
Yeah, I can't do this.
The "it" I referred to is the Nidoking glitch. I didn't want to grind for EXP and fight tons of trainers for hours on end, so I copped out and decided to take the easy way out. What you do is get your last Pokemon poisoned and save in front of this trainer here. Next comes the most time-consuming part, making the game give you an encounter in front of the trainer. I wish I was recording that. So what I did is I started futzing around before I, encountered the dude. So I got an encounter, I was like, ugh, alright. Ran away from it, walked up, and then got the encounter right in front of his face. Oh, that was cool. Once you do so, you let yourself die and get sent back to the Pokemon Center. After that, head back to the grass patch before the forest and find a level 3 Pidgey, and growl at it 6 times. It has to be 6, sometimes it's 5, and it won't let you growl anymore after that. That will not work. Once you enter, the trainer you got the encounter in front of will randomly want to battle you out of nowhere, which triggers a wild encounter with the level 1 Nidoking. It has a very low catch rate, so I lowered its HP to red with Scratch and prayed it stayed in the ball. I failed this twice, which forced me to repeat the glitch, but I did succeed. After catching him, you have to get into a wild battle, switch it out, kill the Pokemon, with Charmander in my case, which gives it EXP. The EXP makes it level 100, and you've basically beaten the game now. Everything became trivial. Brock got smashed, Misty was sunk. I then proceeded to conquer the SS Anne, short-circuit Lieutenant Surge, and after a while I reached Lavender Town. After Lavender, I evicted Team Rocket from the casino, calmed the ghost of Cubone's mom, went down the bike route, and traveled to the Safari Zone to get some necessary items. I also happened to encounter this on the last possible grass tile.
Get in the ball!
It didn't. I then fumigated Koga, swam from Pallet Town to Cinnabar Island, and snuffed out Blaine's team. I had to backtrack to uproot Erica. I continued on to bust Team Rocket's negotiations and befuddle Sabrina. After a final showdown with Giovanni in the Viridian City Gym, I headed to Victory Road to defeat Kyogre for the umpteenth time. After that, I trudged through Victory Road's stupid strength puzzles and headed to the League. The League was trivial. I froze Lorelei, beat down Bruno, terrified Agatha, and tamed Lance. It was then time to face the champion. This was the only fight I was actually nervous about. First thing that happened was,
I forgot to use the elixir!
I got even more nervous. I was praying that he'd send his Arcanine out sooner rather than later. Thankfully, Rhydon and Alakazam were pretty easy, so I managed to use my Elixir. Although doing so, it let Arcanine use Leer, which put me in a bad position for Executor. So I sacrificed my Charmander in order to get rid of the defense lower. I gambled with Earthquake, which lowered its health to less than half. I got lucky with a Hypnosis Miss and killed it with Strength. And finally, Kyogre sent out Blastoise. I only had one option: pray that Earthquake would kill.
Yes! Woo!
Oh, lordy. And with that, the game was over. Not quite. After catching Mewtwo, I had one last goal: defeat Professor Oak. Now, what am I talking about? You can't fight Professor Oak. Actually, yes you can. What you do is get a Pokemon that has a special value of 226. Special is special attack and special defense before it was split into two in later generations. Then fly away from this trainer battle, lose to a different trainer, and find a Ditto to the right of Fuchsia City. Once you do, let it transform into your Pokemon with 226 special, and switch to a Pokemon to use Growl on it. The number of times you growl will change his team. The number of times you growl will determine what Pokemon Professor Oak has on his team. Growl 4 times for Blastoise, 5 for Venusaur, and 6 for Charizard. Since I chose Charmander at the beginning, which caused Kyogre to have a Squirtle, I chose to battle Venusaur. After killing the 5 times growled at Ditto, I flew to Lavender Town. I headed east and hoped for the best. After the menu screen popped up, a battle ensued. And there he was, Professor Oak. Long story short, I kicked his butt pretty easily, and just like that, Pokemon Blue had come to a close. And then I realized I still had 8 games left to go. Unfortunately, I don't have a Game Boy Color, so I had to use my Groudon Game Boy Advance. Forgive some of the recordings. I played most of the game at a coffee shop, and because of the brightness you can see the ceiling. Anyway, I started the game, set the time, and named myself Groudon. After being told how to use a phone, I grabbed my starter and headed to Mr. Pokemon's house. He gave me a Togepi egg and told me to show Professor Elm. Ugh, I hate backtracking.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
But on my way back, a red-haired kid decided to pick a fight. After easily beating him, I got to the lab and named him Kyogre. I fought some trainers while waiting for nighttime. Once it was, I hunted way too long for a Poliwag. I mean, come on, it's not even that rare of an encounter, but I still hunted for it for about 30 minutes. Ugh, anyway, I blazed through Bell Tower and grounded Faulkner. Once I made it through an extremely long route and a cave, I made it to the next town. I stopped Not Proton from cutting off Slowpoke tails. I proceeded to use Insecticide on Bugsy and received the odd egg after the forest. It hatched into a shiny Igglybuff for some reason. In preparation for the third gym, I bought some X items at the mall. I then proceeded to wipe the floor with Whitney. Once she coughed up the badge, I traveled to Ecruteak, met Usain, and humiliated some kimono girls to get the Surf HM, which I taught to Poliwag. Next, I woke up the doggies, beat up Kyogre, exercised Morty, and caught a shiny Gyarados. I followed Lance to the Rocket hideout. I beat Not Petrol and Not Ariana, and killed the electrodes powering the hideout. Once I slipped up Price, I traveled to the Olivine Lighthouse to chat with Jasmine. After being told to go get some medicine, I traveled through a lengthy surfing route and attempted the fighting type gym. I then got really confused as to why there were strength boulders in the way. I then looked around the town for answers, but all I found was Suicune and Usain wanting to fight for Suicune's affection. Defeated, I looked it up. Turns out I had to get the Strength HM from a bar in Olivine, and because you get Fly after the 5th gym, I had to surf all the way back to Olivine, get the HM, and back to the gym. Let me say it again. I hate backtracking. Thoroughly angered, I enjoyed laying the beat down on Chuck. Anger not completely quenched, I flew to the lighthouse, cured the Ampharos, nailed Jasmine. Wait, that doesn't sound right. Then I received a call from Professor Elm saying that Team Rocket had put Goldenrod City into lockdown. I flew in, and with my anger in tow, quickly dispatched Not Archer's attempt at contacting Giovanni. The boredom cured my anger, not beating Team Rocket. Once that whole debacle was over, I went to Ecruteak to catch Suicune, which I did. After that, I navigated Ice Path and reached Blackthorn. I then decided to hunt for a Skarmory. I caught a Donphan, used a repel, and found Skarmory in 4 encounters. I went to try and humiliate Claire, but she was a stuck-up brat and didn't give me the badge, so I went to the cave behind the gym to answer some really easy questions. Once Claire was thoroughly embarrassed, she finally gave me the badge. What is it with the girl gym leaders in this region and not wanting to give you the badge? Jasmine, I guess, gets gets a pass, but the others don't really have an excuse. Anyway, after buying some more X items to prep for the league, I headed to Victory Road. Kyogre was there at the end and tried to stop me, but he was no threat. I proceeded to blow Will's mind, refumigated Koga, trounced Bruno, and called the manager on Karen. Next was the Johto region's champion, Lance. He wasn't too hard thanks to the X items, but it was still nerve-wracking for a second. His level 50 Dragonite lived the Thunder Punch. He then recited the famous quote. Say it with me now.
You don't get to be champion of the Pokemon League without knowing how to spam full restores!
And just like that, Pokemon Crystal is over. What? Yeah, I can't fool you this time. After receiving the Master Ball, I departed for Kanto on the SS Anne. I have no idea why there was a hide-and-seek side quest, but after that, I arrived in the Kanto region. First thing I did was I made my way to Fuchsia City, bought tons of Repels and Ultra Balls, and mentally prepped myself for a long hunt. What was I doing? I was going to attempt to find a Lucky Egg. Now, Chansey has a 1% chance of showing up. I slightly remedied that by making Skarmory level 28 and using Repels. It only boosted it to like 2 or 3%, but it's something at least. I then hunted for 5 days for the Lucky Egg, which Chansey has a 2% chance to be holding. I finally got it. Unfortunately, I didn't record it, but I did take a picture. Now for a quote from the Kilian experience.
Finally, the adventure actually starts.
After giving Typhlosion the Lucky Egg, I went around the region and beat every single trainer, but not before foiling a Japanese stereotype's plans at hijacking the power plant, and beating Kyogre for the final time in the game. After exploring Red's house, I went through the Pokemon gyms sequentially. I smashed Brock, sunk Misty, shorted out Lieutenant Surge, uprooted Erica, befuddled Sabrina, detoxified Janine, snuffed out Blaine, and humbled Blue. I showed Professor Oak my accomplishment, and as a reward, he opened up Mount Silver. After a short bike ride through the caves, I reached the summit, and there I found him. No words were traded, and the battle began. He sent out Pikachu, but I outsped him and killed him with Earthquake. Espeon didn't fare much better. I used Flamethrower and killed it in one hit again. Then came the only thing that had me nervous. Blastoise. I got surprised when Blastoise didn't die from Thunder Punch. Unfortunately for him, he decided to use Rain Dance. For some reason, Red didn't full restore. Not that it would have mattered, he wasted his one chance to inflict heavy damage on me, or kill me with a crit. I finished him off with a 1-2 combo of Earthquake and a Swift on Snorlax, Thunder Punch Charizard, and Flamethrowered Venusaur. And after that, it was over. Red accepted defeat with grace and left, ending Pokemon Crystal. Nope! There's one more thing I wanted to do, and I needed to have 2 Master Balls to pull it off. I proceeded to risk corrupting my save file with the item duplication glitch. Here's how that went.
Here we go. My heart's beating so fast. Okay, Skarmory.
Next, I put Suicune in front of the party, used a repel, and began hunting for Entei and Raikou. Thankfully, it didn't take too long to find them. I managed to make my way to the top of Tin Tower without a map to challenge Ho-Oh.
Ooh, look, it's Ho-Ho. Swear to God, if it's shiny, I'll kick your butt. Beautiful. It's so beautiful. I can't believe how beautiful it is. I also can't believe how dead it is.
Next, I went to Pewter City to grab the Silver Wing from a random old man NPC. I got lost in the Whirlwind Caves, but eventually I found my way to Lugia. But then this happened.
I'm gonna kill it. Ooh! You know what?
Nothing had ever been paralyzed before. I got amused and decided I'd only use 3 Ultra Balls, and if it didn't catch, I'd kill it.
Wow.
Oops. Well, after that, I went to the Pokemon Center and released it immediately.
Goodbye.
And that, for reals this time, is the end of Pokemon Crystal.